Hey, thanks for joining this discussion that I want to have about something that I'm calling the workout motivation paradox. And that's just the name I'm putting around this phenomenon whereby it's hard to do something when you most need to do it or when you most should do it. It's obviously easy when you're already in a routine of something like a workout. So this can apply to other aspects of life, but I'm going to mainly focus on it in the context of working out because at least that's what I've been going through and something you might find relatable. So have you gone through this paradox? And to further illustrate what I mean by it, in case it isn't really clear, think about the fact that when you're most unfit, that's probably when it's the hardest to get fit, for example. And when you're down in some kind of slump of not being able to get into a routine, that's when it's hardest to get back into that routine. Kind of like that analogy of trying to push something uphill because you're in a bit of a hole that you need to dig out of. So another example might be that if you're generally someone who feels low energy and lethargic and you don't exercise, having a good exercise routine will probably help with not feeling as tired and low energy and having aches and pains, for example. At least that's something I recognize in myself throughout the years that I've experienced this paradox. Another aspect of it could be that if you haven't been exercising, you often find it hard to get into the routine of it because you'll feel sore more easily. Let's say you haven't worked out ever, or you haven't gone in a while, let's say months, and you go back to the gym and you get sore quite easily. That delayed onset muscle soreness could last for multiple days, whereas if you've been going fairly frequently, the soreness doesn't come at all, or it's much less severe and it goes away fairly quickly in comparison. So that makes it harder then to go back to the gym. If you've just gone and done a session, you barely worked out, yet you get extremely sore, you can't go the next day. That muscle might take a long time to recover. It could take days. And the same thing applies to if you're getting into cardio. You might get joint pain quite easily. You might get fatigued quite easily from something that's relatively not as hard as if you were going frequently. So that's all part of that paradox. And it's kind of just a bit of a cruel thing in that when you most need it, when it could most help you, it's often the hardest to actually get into it, to go back and work out or to start altogether if you haven't actually been working out. So like I said, it's something that I've experienced many times. I'm sure you watching or listening have experienced this in the past. So I wanted to make this video and just discuss that with you and hear your thoughts. Have you dealt with it? I'm sure you have. And how have you overcome it or just dealt with it or acknowledged it or whatever it might be in relation to this subject? I wanted to make this video to try and just bring awareness to it, put some kind of name, encapsulate it in kind of a label, and talk about some ways that I have been eventually able to deal with it or overcome it, because I've gone through long periods of losing any sort of fitness routine, not having anything at all really, being fairly sedentary and not going to the gym. And then as you may know, if you've watched some of my previous stuff, whether it's on this channel or elsewhere, I got back into things around 2019 and got, into a fairly good fitness routine. Nowhere near where I could be, but much better than where I was. And I was dealing with a lot of aches and pains, and I'm someone who is prone to headaches, for example. And this is another part of the paradox. So for me, I know that if I lack a good sleep hygiene or not working out, don't have any exercise routine, even if it's just, going out and walking, hiking, doing some kind of cardio, it doesn't even need to be necessarily resistance, I will be more prone to getting headaches. So then instead of them happening no or one times a month, if I have that good routine, they can go up to happening multiple times a week. And of course, sleep is a different thing, but that's just to illustrate that I know that accounts for the possibility of getting a headache. So then if I wake up and I have a headache, I'm less likely to want to go to the gym. I can't do it. I mean, sure, I could probably push myself to do it, but again, that's part of that paradox. It just becomes harder. And I feel bad because I knew that if I was able to get back into a good, healthy fitness and eating routine and everything, I would probably feel a lot better and have more energy. So it just kind of sucks. It's just something we have to deal with. It's part of life. I'm not making this video in any way to complain or make excuses, just to bring awareness to it. And that maybe someone watching won't feel so bad about it, because that's one of the first things that I'm going to talk about in terms of ways to deal with it. So let's get into that. How to deal with it. Notice I'm not saying how to fix it, because I don't have any solutions. I don't think it can be fixed. You can't just completely switch something off like that or switch it on. but you can kind of just do your best. All right. So one of the first things is to, like I've alluded to already, is just acknowledge it. It happens to everyone. It's just part of life. When you are deep in that hole, or when you're trying to cycle uphill, that's when it's going to feel the hardest. So you shouldn't feel bad about that more than necessary. It is just the nature of things. Secondly, and this ties into the first bit, is to just not beat yourself up about it. Because I know that's something that I fall into the trap of doing, because I set certain expectations. Like you might have watched one of my previous workout and fitness related videos and discussions where I spoke about wanting to adopt a new cardio routine, something I've never really been good at. I've never played team sports or been much into cardio throughout my life, but I know it's something that will be good for me in the long term to adopt at least some kind of cardio routine, even if it's just going on a jog level 20-minute session on a treadmill or elliptical or something. I can't just rely on the occasional physical activity that I get naturally through going out, walking, hiking. I don't do enough of that. So I need to adopt some kind of, or I want to adopt some kind of cardio routine. And so far, to be honest with you, I've been failing at that. I set myself a goal and I wanted to get it up to going, 2 or 3 times a week, zone 2, 20, 30 minutes, and then plus whatever I happen to do throughout life. I haven't been able to do that. And I had a fairly good resistance routine for the couple of years on and off, but it was mostly on. But then from the beginning of this year, it's been mostly off. I've only been able to go to the gym either no times a week, and sometimes once a week, maybe 2 times for about 6 months. So it's been about an average of once a week for about 6 months now. So I then kind of, without really wanting to, feel like I'm beating myself up about it, telling myself, hey, you set yourself this goal, you failed at it. It's been a year. You were going so well. You were doing 4 or 5 days a week at the gym. Now you're doing nothing, and you've only gone 3 times this month, or you've only gone twice this other month, and then I kind of beat myself up about it. And that doesn't really help. Okay, I know it can't be prevented completely. It's just human nature to some degree, but I think the more you do that, the more you actually feed that paradox, and that's something to kind of avoid doing as much as possible. I'm not going to say that I'm ever going to avoid doing this altogether, but I really think that if you're in that situation, it's important to have at least some awareness of your negative self-talk and to kind of temper it. Try and tell yourself, all right, so you set yourself the goal and you didn't achieve it. So what's beating yourself up going to do to help that? It's not obviously not working. You've been doing that for 6 months. It's not working. So try and do less of it. All right, so the next thing is, once you've accomplished those first 2 in some capacity, is to try and just do the bare minimum. All right, so you've acknowledged that you're not meeting whatever high expectation goal you might have set for yourself, but do something much lower than that. Take the tiny little steps. So even when we're thinking back to that analogy of pushing something uphill and taking that 1 step forward, you might slip back 1 step, you might take 1 step forward, slip back 2 steps. Hey, that's better than if you were not taking any steps, all right? So if you're constantly slipping backwards, that's definitely worse, all right? So then I look back at my situation over the last 6 months and actually feel pretty grateful, because what I've been able to do, if I spin it and reframe it positively, is that I've been able to maintain to some degree some of what I had, most of it, maybe all of it. Maybe not the cardio stuff, but by going once or twice a week, I've maintained. Maybe I haven't made gains, but I put things on hold, and that's better than slipping further back, right? So what helped there is at least going and doing that 1 session a week. And what could also be helpful, something I've done a couple of times, and I want to be a lot better than this, is just do something else in replacement. Just go and do a couple of push-ups, all right? Go and do some dead hangs or pull-ups or whatever it might be. It might sound trivial and completely pointless, but it's not pointless, because it's actually keeping that some sense of that routine in the forefront, rather than doing nothing and just lying in bed and watching Netflix, which is fine, but try and sprinkle in a little bit of a percentage of that goal that you have for yourself. So if you're trying to go and get into a cardio routine, go for a walk. Go out and go for a walk. Hey, but the weather's cold, but it's whatever reasons you might put. This is my example. These are my excuses that I give myself, all right? Do it anyway. Put on a jacket and go for just 5 minutes. Go out, feel too cold, and walk back home. At least then you went and did something. So try and do that bare minimum. That's what I think works for me. Sure, it's not going to feel as good as having gone and done that full session, but tiny steps. Do the little bits. The next thing that might be helpful is to find what inspires you and gets you into that mentality. All right, I put this last on the list on purpose because I don't think it's as valuable as the previous things, but that could be just getting inspired by someone who sets a good example. Don't use that as an excuse to feel bad about yourself and look at that, whoever it might be, and say, oh, look where they're at. I'm never going to be the same. No, use that as inspiration to kind of create your own direction and do some version of what you would like to achieve for yourself in terms of physical fitness. Or it could be watching a movie that gets you amped up, like, it could be watching some sports movie or Rocky or something inspiring like that, or a documentary, or reading books by someone who you admire and gets you into that headspace a little bit easier. Again, I'm not suggesting you should use this as your first point of attack, but yeah, I do often reach to books or videos or something like that kind of help feed me that little bit of inspiration. One example that I have here, because it actually is just a book about workout motivation. It's called The Little Black Book of Workout Motivation. This is by Mike Matthews. I first listened to the audio version of this on Audible because, as you may know, I follow his program in terms of my resistance training through the Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and the Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger books that he's written. So then I eventually downloaded the audio version of this, loved it, bought the physical version, and I just keep it by the bedside, flip it open. There's some really just inspiring little chapters to help you get into that mindset. Okay, but if you haven't done those other things, if you're not just taking care of your mental space, you probably won't even want to read the book, right? So that's why I put that last. But yeah, if you are interested in this, I remember downloading it for free when I did the Audible trial. I think they give you 1 or 2 free books. I'm not sure if that's still running. I'll put a link in the description if it is. Otherwise, there is the hardcover. I like having physical versions of books if I like them enough. And yeah, I can't even remember how much this one cost. It wasn't too expensive, but I'll link that too. But read whatever you want. This isn't me trying to sell you this book or anything like that, because you might want to read something by Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, or whoever you might look up to for workout stuff. Just find something, whatever that is for you. Lastly, I want to hand it over to you watching, listening, if you have any advice that you would like to share with me, because like I said, I'm 6 months deep into one of these ruts that kind of feels like that paradox of when I really want to be back in that routine, but I'm not quite there. But again, I'm trying to be grateful for what I have been able to achieve and to maintain at least, and just tell myself that, hey, this is normal. We all go through this. You'll get back to it if you really want to. If you recognize what's happening, if you actually care about that goal for your own reasons, for yourself, you're doing it for yourself, then it will happen with time. Just be patient with yourself and give it time. But yeah, I would love to hear your advice if you have anything else which maybe gets you out of one of these funks faster, or just gives you better appreciation for this paradox and lets you spin it in some other positive ways besides what I've discussed here. Because I'm sure there's more to be said about it. So thanks for watching or just listening if you've listened to this one. Hope that maybe you got something out of it, and I'll catch you next time.